Hello children, welcome to your first class of social science, and we'll be doing economics, our first chapter, development. The topics that we will cover under this chapter today are meaning of development, different people, different goals, national development, and sustainability of development. So now let's understanding the meaning of development. What do you think is the meaning of development? Development may be progression, moving ahead, scaling heights, achieving something. Right. So now the meaning of development is the process of making something better. And when we are talking about development in economic terms, it means in economics, development is considered as progress in economic viability of a person or a nation. So if we are talking about development at a personal level, what economic achievement are you having? Or at a national level, what economic achievements are you having when we are talking about development in economic terms? So now let's look at the table and try and understand the economic development in two nations. So here you can see two lines, one in blue and one in orange. The blue signifies China and the orange signifies India. So now, which country according to you is developing faster? Definitely China. Now, after understanding the meaning of development, how would you relate it with different people and their goals? Now, your developmental goals would be different from that of your parents or your cousins or your friends. Like, for example, some of you would like to be topping in the class, others would be aspiring for competing in the nationals. Some others would be aspiring for becoming a businessman. So they all have different goals because they are all different people with different requirements and different definitions of development. Now, let's look at this picture and understand how different people have different goals. The first picture that you see on your screen is that of a rickshaw puller. So what do you think would be his developmental goal? His developmental goal would be to gather 3 meals for his family a day, or maybe own a rickshaw. Now, how about this picture, the next that comes on your screen? Here you see the children sitting on the floor. That means it is a rural school. What, according to you, would be the developmental goal of this picture? Maybe to have a better infrastructure, maybe to go in a better school for education. Now let's come to the third picture. And what do you see here? You see a peasant sitting in his field which might have been stricken by famine or drought. What, according to you, would be his developmental goal? Maybe he would be thinking that he would develop if he could gather better irrigation facilities, or if he had a very good harvest, or if he could enjoy a good MSP. So this would be his developmental goal. And now the last picture. Let's see what you see here. They are big industrialists of the nation. What, according to you, would they be thinking about development? Their understanding and their developmental goals would be completely different from the other three. So we understand that there are different people with different developmental goals. So different people with different goals. What, according to you, should be the criteria of understanding how developed we are as a nation? So in order to understand that, the World Bank classifies nations as developed, developing, and underdeveloped in its World Development Report. And what is the criteria that the World Bank uses in order to understand whether the nation falls into the category of developed, developing, or underdeveloped? It uses the criteria of average income. So now what is average income? Very simple. We understand average income as the total income of the nation divided by the total population. Therefore, we get the average income. And the average income is also known as or called as per capita income. But we will see that average income can be disguised. That means it does not necessarily be what it looks. Now, in order to understand that, let's look at this table on your screen. Now, here you can see the monthly income of the citizens of two countries, that is country A and country B. So you have 5 citizens and their monthly income. So in country A, when we do the total, it comes to 50,000, therefore average coming to 10,000. And when we come to country B, here also the total comes to 50,000 and the average comes to 10,000. So now, what according to you is the difference between country A and country B? In country A, if you look at the income of all these 5 citizens, you will see that their income does not vary much. They are quite close to each other. Whereas in country B, 4 of the citizens have a very low income, whereas one has a very high income. So how do we differentiate between the two countries? In country A, by and large, the distribution of income is normal or is equal. But in country B, the distribution of income is unequal. That means 4 of the 5 citizens earn very less and one citizen earns a lot. Therefore, there's a big gap between the rich and the poor, whereas the income in country A seems to be uniformly distributed. So now, keeping in mind the criteria of World Bank in classifying the nation into developed, developing, or underdeveloped nations, do you think it is justified? Well, per capita income should not be enough to categorize a nation into any of these. Now, what other criteria can we consider in order to judge or classify a nation into the category of development? Let's have a look. The UNDP Human Development Report compares countries based on educational levels of the people, their health status, and per capita income. So we understand that per capita income is not sufficient to classify a country for development or in order to understand its development. So what other criteria can we use? We can use education as one of the criteria as to how much of uh, the population is educated, or we can also use health criteria, that means how good health facilities does a nation have, or we can use how much of freedom do the people of that country enjoy. So along with economic criteria, that is per capita income, we can also use social and political criteria. Now let's look at the table here and find out the ranking of some of the countries in context to development. Now here, when we look at the table, we would see the gross national income of Norway is far less than that of Singapore. But in the table, Norway lies on the top because when we try to put together all the other criteria along with per capita income, we see that Norway stands far ahead of Singapore. So it is the United Nations Development Program that considers all the other criteria along with per capita income in order to rank the nation in context to development. Now, after having a look at the table and different countries, we saw that Norway stands number one amongst few countries according to the UNDP. Now let's look at the rank of India along with its neighboring countries. So when we look at this table, we see some of the neighboring countries, and India stands second among them and 130 in the world, whereas our neighboring country Sri Lanka, which is a smaller country, holds the rank of 76. Being a smaller country, we see that the gross national income of Sri Lanka is far better, approximately close to double than that of India. And similarly, the other parameters are also better as compared to India. The way we try to find out the rank of nations around the world, keeping in mind all the parameters along with per capita income, let us now apply the same in order to find out the development of state within a nation. Now, while trying to find out the development of state within a nation, we will be assessing them on the parameters of income, health, education, etc. And here we would be comparing the three states of India. And these three states are Haryana, Kerala, and Bihar. Now, if we try to assess them on per capita income, we see Haryana having the highest per capita income and Bihar the lowest. But we have understood in the past slides that just per capita income is not sufficient to rank a nation or a state in context to development. So, if we really want to see the development of a nation or a state, we need to consider other parameters as well. So, if we consider other parameters as well for these three states, let's see what we find out. Now, for the same states, that is Haryana, Kerala, and Bihar, we consider other parameters, out of which the first one is the infant mortality rate. Now, what do you understand by infant mortality rate? Infant mortality rate indicates the number of children that die before the age of 1 year as a proportion of 1,000 live children born in that particular year. Next parameter that we come across is literacy rate. Now, what is literacy rate? Literacy rate measures the proportion of literate population in the age of 7 and above. That means the people who are of age 7 and above can read and write with understanding in any language are considered to be literate. Now, when we see the infant mortality rate, in which we see the lowest is that of Kerala and highest is that of Bihar. When we come to the literacy rate, we see the highest is that of Kerala and the lowest is that of Bihar. And then next we come to the net attendance ratio. Now, what is NAR? It is the total number of children of age group 14 and 15 years attaining school as a percentage of total number of children in the same age group. Now, if we look at the figures under NAR, again, Kerala is the highest and Bihar is the lowest. Now, when we try to compare all the parameters, we see Bihar being the lowest. So we take it off our table. So now we are left with two states, that is Haryana and Kerala. When we compare Haryana and Kerala only on the basis of per capita income, we see Haryana is more developed as compared to Kerala. But when we combine or when we see all the parameters together, we see though per capita income of Haryana is higher, but infant mortality rate of Kerala is lower, which is better. Literacy rate of Kerala is higher, which is better. Net attendance ratio of Kerala is higher, which is better. So when we combine all the three, we understand that Kerala is a more developed state as compared to Haryana. So now we come to the last topic of this chapter. What is sustainable development? Let's understand what is sustainable development. Sustainable development is a type of development that meets the need of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs and which does not harm the natural environment. So what do we understand by sustainability now or sustainable development? That we do development now. We should be developing today, but not at the cost of the future generations. And an economic development that takes place without depletion of natural resources is sustainable development. So, of course, we have to go ahead with economic development, but also keep in mind that the natural resources are not depleting at a very fast pace. Now, sustainability of development is comparatively a new area of knowledge in which scientists, economists, philosophers, and other social scientists are working together. So, in order to understand sustainable development, it's just not a task of one. It is the heads and minds of many, their knowledge that makes us or helps us understand what is sustainable development. Now let's take the example of crude oil. Now if we talk about three places, the Middle East, United States, and the world altogether. Look at the reserves in 1,000 million barrels. Middle East 808 and United States 50 and the world altogether 1697. And this amount of crude oil is going to last for how many years? 808 would last for 70 years, 50 would last for 10.5 years, and 1697 will last for 50.2 years. So what next after this finishes? So today it becomes our duty to take care that these resources do not deplete in a faster pace, and in order to save them or use them judiciously, what alternative means can we adopt? So now, after understanding sustainability, why do you think is the need for sustainability of development? Let's understand that. Since second half of 20th century, scientists have been warning that the present type and levels of development are not sustainable. What do we understand by this? That if we keep using the natural resources the way we are using today, we cannot call it a sustainable development because the pace is too high and we will not be left with much for our future generations. So we really need to take care of this. Over the time, resource will get exhausted from planet Earth, and if we keep using resources like this, they will get exhausted and will not be there on Earth at all. Environmental degradation do not respect national or state boundaries. That means the fast exhaustion of these resources are leading to environmental degradation, which is not limited to any nation or any state. It is affecting globally. So again, there is a need for sustainability of development. And yes, very rightly said, we have not inherited the world from our forefathers. We have borrowed it for our children. It's not that whatever we have inherited is to be used by us, but we have to use it judiciously and save it for the future generations. So children, that's the end of the chapter, and I hope you understood and you had a little better understanding and clarity of what development is. Take care and stay safe.